What's going on, guys? Droppadusky here. Today, I wanted to do a weekly or week review of Heist League. We've been playing pretty hard all week long, and I wanted to talk about the pros, the cons, and a couple of different thoughts that I had in regards to like potentially things that I wish we'd seen and we didn't, or different ways to make the heist mechanic seem more heisty, for lack of a better word. So let's jump into the pros first. So for those of you guys that haven't done Heist yet, it is actually a very fun, unique mechanic for Path of Exile. Now, it's hard to speak about the pros, but not also mention the fact that over the course of this week, the mechanic has changed so dramatically multiple times that it's really hard to keep up with. In the first part of the heist, there was alert given by killing the mobs inside. So for myself, I'm playing Tuna's Toxic Rain Miner. I'm stacking evasion, and I've got a phasing flask, and I've got the anomalous withering step with phasing. Like, I was basically kiting everything through and not killing anything till the end, and utilizing that with the rogues that give you less alert for popping boxes. I could get all the boxes, but it also made the mechanic really interesting and unique. Now, that being said, they've then changed that and made it into something where you can kill the mobs without gaining alert. Now, I did kind of prefer that change when it first came out because of the fact that it made it feel like I was actually playing the game and also at least gaining some XP while in these heists. But at the same time, through that second iteration, then it was just way, way, way too easy. And it was basically like a loot simulator. Now, it still had that unique, really fun feel. If you're going all the way towards the end, the escape mechanic in the pros section, I would say it takes the sense that you have in the labyrinth without it being the labyrinth, right? I don't like doing labs. I know a lot of people don't like it. Some people enjoy it for currency, but for myself, it's never been something that I like lean towards. I get it done because I need it because it makes my character strong, right? But it's an interesting way to add in like a hardcore aspect to Path of Exile for those of us out there that don't really play a lot of hardcore. So it is fun, and it is really, really rewarding, and I still feel that it's rewarding even after the third iteration. Um, the other cons here, or pros here, are that there is, these rogues now that we can gear. So we're not only highly focused on gearing our own character as we always have been in PoE, but we have these new NPCs that we can, are new characters that we can gear to make the heists feel better, right? So overall, I feel like a lot of these things that have come through for the mechanic itself will lead to a very, very fun, consistent mechanic once we work through all the kinks. Now, I want to use that to segue into the cons from this league. The changes are just happening way too rapidly. I mean, from the first day, you go in, I come up with this strategy while I'm going through. I'm like, well, I'm able to get more rewards if I don't kill. So let's make my character really hard to hit, and let's make it so that I can zoom through mobs and I can kite. And, I did a bunch of these runs on stream where I was literally being chased by like 50 monsters and then phasing right through them and just continuing to do this like really cool thing where I'm also trying to loot at the same time because I've clicked a chest and a ton of currency has come out. So I want to loot, do a sweep, loot. It was really interactive in a different way, a way that I've never played this game, right? As typically PoE is a game where you're just destroying all the monsters you possibly can. But once that changed, it felt like, okay, I'm doing a not juiced map with fairly dangerous mobs, but if your RNG hasn't been great, right? There's a lot of people pulling a lot of currency out of heists, but for myself personally, I mean, I've gotten maybe two kind of mediocre 6 links, or a couple of things, no exalts, none of that stuff. It's been one of those instances where how is this going to be more beneficial to me than making progress on the Atlas? And that leads to my second thing in the cons section. There is no tie to like the Atlas in regards to like pushing you to want to do progression, right? So in the first couple of iterations, the heist was so lucrative for a lot of players that you'd be focusing nothing but contract. And then fast forward a couple of days into the league, and you're looking at your atlas like, well, I haven't even fight serious yet. Like and to be fair, that's not necessarily a bad thing, except for when we're talking about XP, right? Like my character is currently 91 and we're hitting the 7th day of the league. Now I have had a fair amount of deaths because I've started doing a lot of delirium, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But the XP is terrible, right? I've been leveling, in Enlightens and other gems in my offhands, and they're barely getting anything. And this is even now once we're killing the monsters. There really needs to be some sort of XP benefit to doing these things. It could be at the end. It could be, I know Tarky had talked about that in one of his recent videos. There needs to be some mode of keeping up XP while you're doing these things, because it just doesn't feel like, for some people, getting to 100 or getting to high levels in the game is a big part of their the joy that comes from doing the league mechanics, or the league. So that being said, I think XP has been a huge problem. Another con that I have that needs to be addressed is the crashes. Now, myself personally, of course, I had no issues with crashes through the first 2 iterations of Heist. Then we get a patch where the first time they specifically said we're gonna make changes so the crashes go away, I start crashing, right? And then this is the atypical experience for most people in Path of Exile, at least from what I've seen in my guild and other players that I know. It's almost like a roll of the dice every time, whether or not your specific account or a PC is going to play nicely with the league mechanic. I've had leagues where I crash all the time, and a bunch of people in chat are like, everything's great, bro. Nothing's going on here. And then the next league, I'm in the seat where I can actually play the game, and they're sitting in chat really upset that they've waited so long for a new league mechanic to come out, and now they're crashing every single time they go in. Now, the added feels bad, man, to the crash issues is that you lose the loot that you've gotten, just like if you were to die in the heist. So if you've got yourself a really juicy drop, or you've got a whole stash full of, small currencies, gone, right? This cannot be a thing that continues to happen with POE and their league releases. I know that this, coming into this game a couple of years ago, I knew that it was a little different and unique in a sense that they'd put out a league and it was almost common knowledge that it was basically a beta, right? You're just going to run around and hope that it works. And specifically for something that is as interesting and unique as Heist, it really sucks to, go watch the clip videos, right? And half of it is people dying to crashes, right? That's just not okay. I mean, I don't have a monstrous guild or anything. And when, roughly 50% of people have experienced multiple crashes through the start, something's not right? I think that maybe we're beyond the point where live beta is acceptable. Maybe there should be a little more internal testing, trying a lot more. And I don't know what their specific guidelines are in regards to testing a league mechanic before it comes out, but it's obvious that something is up in regards to crashes, because it just is it's the broken record thing. I'm crashing. This has to be changed, and it has to be addressed. Another thing in the cons section, the rogues, they seem very inconsistent. They've gotten better over the iterations, but the first couple of days, all I used was Karst, because Karst gave you reduced alert from chests, and since I wasn't killing anything anyways, as I had set up my character to do so, I was getting every single reward, every single run, right? Occasionally I'd get killed if I got caught at one of the giant doorways or something, but it was just so unbalanced, it felt like that was the only way to do it. Another thing that they've changed, and I put this in the cons section even though I kind of agree with it, they've modified it so that delirium orbs and other high-level, league-related currencies can't drop until after 68. I think that's a good change personally. It kind of feels bad, man, because my current league strategy, as I was pretty broke, even though my character is fairly set up at this point. I was sitting on maybe 4 or 5x as of yesterday, and now I'm sitting at 16 and 17 if I do a convert, because as of yesterday and a little bit the day before, I started saying, let's go back to what's consistent. And I was using contracts for demolition only, and I was going in and looking for delirium boxes, right? Delirium boxes were throwing out and spewing delirium orbs, which, to be fair, you were getting way too early levels before anyways, which, just wasn't, I mean, what other league have we had since Delirium where you've got, 16 Delirium orbs before you're, level 80? That there's something going on there. So I think that change is good, but I will put it in the cons, as that's a real feels bad moment when you've gone so far through the league, experiencing this kind of loot scenario, and then it goes away, right? So the changes are just coming way too fast, and it's really, really hard to keep up with. I do feel that another thing in the cons section, and not to focus too much on these, but I do think these are things that are nice to address, is the rogues themselves can be very, very frustrating. I don't understand. I guess it's a nice little gimmicky thing that if you do the explosion for the demo specifically, because I do the demo so often for Delirium, you set the bomb, and then say, for instance, you're in like a room where it's a little hairy or there's a lot of monsters there. He has to do this jog backwards and then put up a shield to blow up the wall. Whereas I can stand on the explosion and nothing happens to me. So it's like I need to kite him back to do that explosion. But why? Right? It doesn't hurt me. So it's just a gimmicky thing that looks cool. Just have him automatically run backwards and do it if he's gone through the process of opening the door. It's dumb, right? Another thing is that a lot of these rogues will just inspiration the psychic, he likes to fight. He's just always fighting. It's like I'll run over, set him up, and he's still, 20 feet away from me, slinging out 0 DPS at these monsters, when then I have other rogues that almost completely ignore him, run up and do their door and do their job. So there's very inconsistent mechanics with the rogues, and I really hope that they do more and more to address those things. Now, before we make this too long, I do want to jump over and talk about some other thoughts I have on the league mechanic and things that I wish I had seen, right? So going into this and thinking about Heist, my first thought came to, because I play a lot of World of Warcraft, really excited for the upcoming expansion. My thought was, after I'd done a few, where the raise the alarm mods, right? Now, there are a couple of mobs that do increase your alert, some totems, and there's these, sentries that kind of do this thing, but they're not, we've seen this for years and years as gamers. You introduce a mob during a raid fight, for instance, in World of Warcraft, that has to be killed, right? And it's very, very tanky, and its sole purpose is to run from point A to point B to hit an alarm that's either going to swarm you with enemies or completely, rip your run, right? We don't have any of those. I don't understand why GGG didn't take an easy win there and create these monsters that, you could give them a ton of affixes that make them really hard to kill. They resist every type of damage, and they're escorted by a bunch of regular mobs. And the key thing about this kind of interaction in these games, or this game mode, is that you're so focused on killing that monster that the other monsters around you become exponentially more dangerous, because they're not dying immediately and they are attacking you, trying to protect that that specific key target, right? I feel like if they'd have introduced something like that, it would have made these things even more intense, because they are very intense when you're going through the escape mode. Another thing that I have to mention, even though it's hard to use the comparison to Delirium or Legion, because those are my two favorite leagues, I'm now doing Delirium every day, and it's showering currency on my character. They're really intense, really scary, especially at this point in the league with the life pool that I have right here. You're going into 60% Delirium T16 maps, and Pitosis shows up and it changes your world, right? There are a lot of mechanics that they could have utilized from previous leagues that make these things even more scary, but not just one-shotty, right? That's one thing that a lot of people have dealt with. Okay, he's blowing up the door and then, you're dead, right? And they've done some things to address that and fix that. But I do feel like some of the previous league mechanics still super outshine Heist, especially when it comes to the intensity that we've seen. Now, of course, they don't all have to be created equal, and this is just a personal gripe because I just love Delirium so much at this point. So I do think that they could have utilized other ways to make them more scary and more intense, and especially in regards of juicing the contracts, right? Like make the monsters drop more loot, but the chests aren't just like these click and wins, so that you're not in a position where it's like, in the first week, I'm just going to not kill anything. Fuck it. We're just going to run through. I'm going to click every box and I'm going to kite everything as well as I can. Another thing that I thought would have been really neat to see, specifically for the rogue mechanics, like I'm gonna go back to WoW as it's a really good example that's done this pretty well over the years. Why not have a rogue that can hide you, right? This whole concept of heist, like where we should be sneaky, we should be going in. It doesn't feel that way at all to me, right? I don't know if you guys disagree. Let me know in the comments below. But it feels basically like a indoor map that has an escape thing at the end, right? Like, why not have, rogues in WoW have stealth? You could have had a rogue that when you equip something, and maybe this does happen at some point, I just haven't seen it yet, but can create a stealth barrier that gives you 100%, whatever the new, hidden mod is, because they made some changes on the big last patch, that makes it much, much harder for enemies to see you, so that you are enticed to walk very slowly as your rogue goes through some sort of, scripted movement, like his abilities up, follow him rather than him follow you. There are a lot of these little interactions that they could have done and potentially can add in the future that make this feel more like a heist and less like a map with juicy boxes. Guys, I don't want to go too long, so I'm going to wrap it up there. But overall, Heist Week 1, it's been a lot of fun. But my final closing thought here is I know we make changes based on player feedback, but certain things like crashes and, just general broken game, like these things are slipping through the cracks way too often. Hopefully in future iterations or future new leagues, we can have a lot more consistent interaction specifically on servers, right? The servers should work. If the mechanic needs some tweaks, so be it. But the tweaks shouldn't be associated with when are we going to get the crash fixes coming through. Please, for the love of God, I'd like to do the mechanic. Guys, if you haven't tried Heist yet, definitely check it out. It is really cool and fun. I know we've talked about a lot of cons here, but all things said, it's unique, it's different, the rewards are good, and it's introducing basically followers that we get to interact with in gear. So I do think it's worth playing. I'm going to keep playing it for another couple of weeks, and then we're going to jump into WoW. Guys, if you haven't seen the Twitch stream, it's twitch.tv/Dropadooski. Thanks everybody for checking this out. Good luck in the heists, and we'll do another video soon. I think now with the previous patch, we're going to do maybe a Spectre build next with Heist Spectres, as they've added the ability to make Heist monsters into Spectres. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Peace.